Hi everybody, I wanted to show you something that I think might be a little bit of a game changer for a lot of people who've been using my Craft Studio. And I know that it involves buying a scan and cut, but what's really interesting is as somebody that hasn't used my Craft Studio very much before, when I did it first time with the Quirky Bird collection, we sold a lot of scan and cuts because whenever I've sat and watched my Craft Studio, I've been in awe of what people can do with it, because it's been something that I never really got involved with. And I didn't get involved with it for two reasons. First of all, I didn't think that I would be able to do it. And secondly, I knew that if I could, I would get completely lost in it and absorbed in it, and I didn't have time to do that. And now I've got a bit more time. So I gave it a go, and I was right. Well, I was wrong, and then I was right. I was wrong because I can do it, and I was right because I am completely absorbed in it. And I love the idea of being able to design digitally and see what a project is going to look like before you commit to printing it out. But I'm also somebody that likes dimension on their projects, and having had a scan and cut, sitting there fussy cutting stuff out didn't appeal to me at all. So when I got involved with my Craft Studio, I was like, right, how do I make that happen? How do I make it easier? And it was prompted by a customer actually, emailing into one of David's shows, I think, and saying, is there any way that you can, once you've printed it, you can cut it out? So that set me a challenge, and I love a challenge. So yesterday I went into my Craft Studio with the digital Craftorium Cardmaker's Compendium USB, and I created this design with the sunflowers and the eucalyptus and a few little leaves and the roses. Now, I know that most of you, well, I would probably say all of you, know more about my Craft Studio than I do. So I'm not even going to try and teach my granny to suck eggs, because you know how to do that. And if you don't, I will do it through one of the shows when we're on TV with this product. But I designed this and I printed it off. Okay, so I sent it to my printer and I printed it off just on a regular inkjet printer. Then I went back into my Craft Studio and I took the brightness as far left on the slider as it will go, and I turned the image black. So now I've got a completely black image. So what I'm going to do now is scan this in and create a cutting file from this, because this is exactly the same as that, but it's black. It's the same shape, it's the same size, it's the same everything. So what I'm going to do now is create a cutting file using this. So to do that, I would recommend, and this is a do as I say, not as I do moment, I would recommend that you have a scanning mat. And the reason I'd recommend you have a scanning mat is because it's quicker. Because if I scan in on my cutting mat, and I've left mine at home, that's why I can't do it on a scanning mat. It's quicker because it's not going to be picking up all these lines. And it will give you a really nice clean background. Print this in best quality, all right? I know you're thinking, well, that's just wasting ink, Mel, and I get that, but for it to be able to create a cutting file, you'd pay for a cutting file anyway, so it'll cost you less than it would cost you for that. So let's open this up, and we're going to scan this in, and we're going to scan it to save it into the machine's memory. We can do that because the artwork we've bought the correct commercial license from. So once we've got that artwork, we think we can then do what we want with it digitally. So it's fine. And B, now we've bought it, we're giving you permission to do it as well. So what I'm going to do is scan from the home screen this time. So I'm going to scan, and I'm going to scan to create cutting data. So scan to cut data. See if I can find my little stylus, and then I'm not sticking my finger in the middle of the screen. So scan to cut data, it's black on white, so I'm going to keep it in grayscale, and I'm going to press start. Now there are some little landlocked areas on here, so we have to be aware that the scan and cut needs a 3mm turning point to be able to get in, rotate, meet itself and come out. So I'm going to stick with the 3mm, but I'll show you how you can do it slightly differently as well. So it's going to recognise it. Now, this is where a scanning mat would recognise quicker, because what it's recognising now is the image, the black image, but it's also trying to find all the little cut lines. And it's Andrew, my producer in my ear, has just said, "You're filthy, Matt." It's not filthy, it's just well loved, Andrew. There you go. Right, now then, we've got options here. This one is the same as direct cut, so it will only ever find the outside edge, but it will find the outside edge of all those little pieces as well. So while I've got it on there, I'm going to drag this over here. So we're getting rid of all those. Okay, so I've now got the outline of that, but I do want it to find some of these little pieces in here because some of them are big enough to be cut out. So if I use this one, this finds either side of every line. So if I click on that one and it processes it, you can see there's little pieces here and here and here that are now it's going to cut out. These little teeny tiny bits that are in here are so small that the scan and cut wouldn't cut it out anyway. So it's entirely up to you what you do. If you're working on a CM machine, I would recommend that you now just cut it as it is. And the reason for that is the tip on the blade is finer, and it's much finer than the tip of the blade on the SDX blade, which means that if you're asking it to turn too tightly, because it's fine, it can take the tip off your blade. The tip on the SDX blade, even though it will still only cut 3 millimeters cleanly, is stronger. So if you want to try and get it to cut those little teeny tiny bits out, which doesn't worry me at all, I'm not bothered about cutting those out because it doesn't add anything to the design. But if you're somebody that does want to do it, you're going to ignore object size and you reduce it down to 1 millimeter. And then instead of picking everything up that's 1 millimeter, that's 3 millimeters and above, you'll see when I go down to here, it picks everything up that's 1 millimeter and above. So that's how you do it if you want to. But I am giving you that caveat warning that if you do it on a CM, it might take the tip off your blade because it's too tight to turn. So I'm going to take it back up to 3 and I'm going to press OK. And I'm going to press OK again. And I'm going to let it process that. And I'm going to save it into the machine's memory. Okay, so I'm saving that cutting file now forever until I delete it off. So it's now plotting it all out. And then it's saved it as file number 10. So the next bit, press home, delete the patterns and unload the mat. We're now going to put our image back on here. And I'm never going to get it in exactly the same place, so I'm not going to worry about it. But I am going to try and make sure that it's straight, okay? Because I want to make sure that I don't have to start rotating that cutting file. So I've got this back on here now. Now I have to have this on a cutting mat because it won't allow me to cut it on a scanning mat. So from here, we retrieve data from the machine's memory and we find file number 10. Which is there. We press OK, put it on a workable mat. We go to Edit and we multiple select everything on the mat so it picks up all the little pieces. Now this is really interesting because it's sectioned off this bit and it's sectioned off this bit as separate pieces. So when it cuts it in a different way, and that's because of the print quality. Okay, so you will get this, and when it starts cutting it will feel like it's cutting weirdly. But it's correct, so don't worry about it. So I'm going to press OK, go to Object Edit and group it all together. So I've now got a complete shape. So I'm going to scan the coloured image in now so I can line that cutting file up over the coloured image. So I'm going to load the mat and scan this in. And this will work for all of it. So why am I not just scanning this? Let me just unload this and come back to this picture. So if we can go on overhead, Andrew, that would be great. Why, you might be asking, am I not just scanning that in and asking it to cut it out? The reason is that any scanner, whether it's inside the scan and cut or wherever it is, needs contrast. So there's a part there where that eucalyptus leaf is so pale, it won't see the contrast between there and the outside edge. It also won't find it there or there where that little bit of pale yellow is, or there, or let's have a look, there, or there, or there, or there, and that's it. Okay, so this is just as quick and easy to do. Otherwise, you've got to go in with a pencil and keep scanning it in and seeing if it's found it or not. So this is the way I would do it. You want to do it the different way? Absolutely. You know, I'm not going to come around, knock on your door and tell you off. There's no scan and cut police. But I just thought I would mention that. So now what I'm going to do is scan this in from here. So I'm going to scan this in so we bring a colour image up. So this is now like your reflection, but without the rectangle, so you have to do a little bit more work. But actually, you know what a game changer this is. Isn't that just fabulous? Because as you're building this pattern, you could then create your decoupage pieces at the same time and then turn everything black. So you could have your completed image, and then you could have all your layers of your butterflies that it could also cut out, ready to build them up dimensionally. I think that's amazing, and I'm going to do that during the shows on Create and Craft, because I think it's really important. So I'm just going to, for now, make that darker so I can actually really get in on the detail, and then I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to zoom in to 400%, and I'm going to find one part of it that I'm going to try and line up perfectly, which is going to be this leaf here. So I'm going to nudge this until I'm happy with that alignment. And then I'm also looking at the butterfly wing here. And now it's never going to find that little teeny tiny bit in there. So you are going to have a very, very, very slight halo, but I'm going to try my best. There we go, look at that. Now I'm going to scroll down. And I actually think that's going to cut out perfectly. So I'm going to press OK. And I'm going to ask it to cut it. Isn't this the most exciting thing ever? And if people are already doing this, amazing. I'm really pleased for you. This is something that came from a question from a customer. And because I'd never used MicroStudio before, I didn't understand the process of it. Now I understand the process of it. I can make it do this. I love it. I love it. I think it's just fabulous. So it might not be that you go out and buy a scan and cut straight away, because it is absolutely a considered purchase. Keep an eye out on our free classes as well, because more often than not we do a discount code that gives you 10% off everything Brother, including the machine. So wait for us to do a good offer on it, and it might then be worth you trying one. Oh, bear with, I'm just going to pause that. Quick cutting. It's my fault. I haven't stuck my paper down properly. So that's all right. We'll do it again. We'll just do it again because it's worth duplicating it anyway to show you. So that's my fault. I've already got the cutting file, remember, so I don't need to do that bit again. I just need to sort this out. So this is a lighter weight piece of paper, and this mat is sticky in some places and not sticky in another. And rather than avoiding this and cutting it and not doing it, I'd rather go back and show you exactly what we do. So I'm going to line it up here. In fact, I'm going to line it up in the top left corner and burnish it down properly. If you find that your machine is doing that, there's a couple of things that you can do to stop it. One, make sure your mat's and this is stuck down properly. Two, take out your blade and make sure, this is a prime example, that there are no bits stuck on your inside your blade housing, and there is right there, and it's craft card, and that was stuck on the top of the blade, so the blade couldn't get to cut, so it then started to peel off. So always check first, because there's always a reason why it's doing it. And I'm going to drop that in there, but I am going to give you another tip as well. So I've still got my cutting file there. I'm going to go back. I'm going to load my mat, and I'm going to scan this in again. So don't panic. If it does it, just press pause. It's not going to break your machine. So I'm going to scan this in now, and we're going to get it to scan again. So let's have a see what we get with this time. The other thing that Brother have done, and I knew when they said an auto blade, I knew at some point they would have to add in a facility that enabled you to still adjust it so it's still adjustable, because although the scan and cut reads the depth of something, it doesn't know the density. So I'm going to talk to you about that for a minute as well. So I'm going to go to edit and zoom right in again. And remember, I'm just finding a point. So I'm finding this leaf here, which is here. So I'm going to drag this over, because I haven't got a rectangle, because this isn't one of our reflections. This is something that we've created. So I'm going to nudge this across, because I can see there's a bit of white there, and I'm going to nudge that across there. I'm happy with this line. I'm looking at the antenna on the butterfly. I've got this perfect line there. So now I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to ask it to cut this. So I'm going to go to please select and cut. And I'm just going to talk to you for a minute about this little thing here. So the cut pressure is on auto and the cut amount is on 0.5 mil. Now this is probably a lighter weight, but a lighter weight, thinner than 0.5 mil, but I'm going to leave it on that. But I'm also going to drop my pressure down because it's quite a thin paper. And the pressure is the force that the machine puts on the blade. Now with a 0.5 mil, it doesn't need pressure. So I'm dropping it down to -1. If you put everything on auto, it should do it automatically. But sometimes you might just need to adjust that pressure because you don't need the force, you need the blade depth. So now I'm going to press start. If you're doing this on a 140 GSM on a CM machine and it's a new blade, I will put your pressure on -1 and your blade on about 3. And then if it doesn't cut through, up your blade depth first. Don't make your pressure your first resort. It doesn't need more force. If your blade depth isn't long enough to get through the material that you want to cut, it doesn't matter how much force you put on it, that blade's not long enough to go through the material. So you lengthen the blade first, then add the pressure if you need to. And that's what makes the difference. So I can see now I could still go down to -2 here because it's still pulling that card a little bit. And that's because my mat isn't brilliant, to be fair, but also because it's quite a thin paper. And it depends on which paper you're printing on as well. You know, it's all down to the length of the fibre, the way that it's mulched together, the coating that's on it. There's all these different parameters, but you'll get used to your machine. I'm probably also ready for a new blade, to be fair, because I've had that blade in a long time. And it is scrunching it a little bit. So I'll show you the one that I did yesterday when we've done this. See where we get to. There we go, it's doing its little landlocked areas now. Definitely needs retacking, that mat. Right, so let's unload this and see what we've got. So we've got a little bit of scrunching going on. Let's see what we've got here. Let's take all this away and see what we're left with, because that's the bit that we're interested in, isn't it? We're not worried about this bit that we're taking away. We're interested in the bit that's left behind. So there, it's scrunched a little bit, but we'll pull that off. But you can see now, if we can get in really close up here, Andrew, that would be great. I've got right round that leaf there, and it's gone all the way around, and it's found those areas. Now I am going to try and get this off the mat. And I think what I've done with this mat is I've put too much glue in some places and not enough glue in another. So the thing that I tell you not to do, I've gone ahead and done. And there will come a time, even if you're retacking your mats with pinfly stencil glue, that you will need a new mat. And you know what? I'd rather that was 2 or 3 times a year than 2 or 3 times a month. So we just have to accept that sometimes we have to buy a new mat. That's not going to come off there. So I'm going to turn this over and show you the one that I did yesterday, which is this. How fabulous does that look? I went running around the office going, look, it's worked. Look at this. And it was really funny because when I met one of the design team members at a show that we'd done before, and he was saying, you know, how do I cut it out? Because it's a JPEG file, and the scan and cut doesn't read JPEG files, but you're not importing it into the machine as a JPEG, you're scanning it in, so it doesn't know what it is. It just sees it as an image. And I think that's a really, really good way of building up your design. So for example, if you then wanted to decoupage this, you could have saved this flower here, so all this part from there all the way down, and you could have saved that as one part as a file, because as you design it, you group it and you duplicate it and you put it on another part of your page. Then you could just have had the butterfly with the eucalyptus, because that's the bit that's at the front, and you could just have got it to cut the butterfly and the eucalyptus, and then that can go on top. Then you would have had just the butterfly, because that's further forward from the eucalyptus. So you can really start to begin designing your own decoupage sheets. And once I've done the show and I've got a bit more time, what I'll do is I will take this and I will break it back down and make it decoupage. In fact, I'll try and do it next week before we go to air with it. So by the time you're watching this, I will have done it. But I think that's a super cool way. So when you think about how a decoupage sheet works, you've got the whole image that you start with, and then it builds up in layers. And it starts with the back, and then the next layer that's closer, and then the next one that's closer still, and the next one that's closer still. So if you can break down an image like that, you can then create your own decoupage sheets, because all you do is put them in a different place on your sheet, print it off, turn everything black, and then create that whole thing as a cutting file. In fact, as we're filming this, it's Thursday, as it's Good Friday tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to spend the day doing that, because now I want to make it happen, because I'm excited, because I've just thought about that. But that's how you could do it. And I think that, again, is a game changer. And it's really interesting. You know, I've watched Diane do Micro Studio for years and never thought about using it with the scan and cut. But then as soon as I thought, oh, good grief, why did I not think about that? I can just make it black and scan it in. Now I'm all over it. And that's what's lovely. Something that actually there's a free version out there that you can get for free, a bit like Canvas Workspace, Micro Studio, and all that education that Diane brings you, and all the different things that David does with it, and all the different things that the design team do with it. It's now something different because you're bringing in another piece of equipment. So the Micro Studio customers, if you treat yourself to a scan and cut, and I don't say that flippantly because I know it's a considered purchase, that takes your crafting to a different place, because now you can make your own decoupage sheets. And if you used our artwork, you could make and sell those decoupage sheets. So you've then got a little business in a box. And even if people then fussy cut it, they've still got them as decoupage sheets. But if you've got a scan and cut, Micro Studio is free. You're just buying the artwork then it brings a whole new strand to use in your scan and cut. So what I'm trying to say is, if you invest in a scan and cut, it's not, oh, it cuts shapes and that's it. It's more than that. You can make the shapes do what you want them to do, and that's the joy of it. And that's why 8 years on, I'm still thinking of new things to do with it, because it is a really creative piece of equipment. So that's that. I know it didn't cut perfectly, but you know what? Things like that will happen. They happen to me, they happen to you. It's just life. But absolutely, that, I think, is brilliant. And now I'm going to go home and I'm going to work on the decoupage layers so that I can show you that on TV, because I think that's a game changer too, because now you can design your own. Have fun. Happy Easter. Lots of love. Bye. If you want to see more from Highlight Crafts, make sure you click the like button. Subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below, and click the bell icon to receive notifications of all our future content. You can also click here to see our latest video, or click here to see more videos like this one.